Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon, everybody. And it's an honor to speak with you all today on a subject that's very close to my heart, much to my heart. So as introduced, I'm Andy Palmer. I'm 41 years in the automotive business, notably serving as Chief Operating Officer of Nissan, where, among other things, as Chris said, I led the Nissan Leaf project, but also the associated battery technologies and built the 3 factories around the world that were AESC, including the one in Sunderland. I followed this with 6 years at Aston Martin, and I'm now chairman of Optare PLC, driving the change to EV buses under the Switch mark. And I'm also vice chairman of Innobat, which is a Slovakian battery startup. What I'd like to do today is start with a view on the global automotive industry in general. This is an industry fundamentally challenged even prior to COVID-19. It's in a period of massive change, primarily driven by external factors forcing that change. This change is really being driven by many influences. It's hard to put them in any order, but I would suggest that perhaps the most profound is the change in customer expectations. However, changing customer dynamics is but one of the changes facing the auto industry. Technology, environmental considerations, and legislation are all imposing changes. Gen Z, the generation which is just emerging to take their tests and buy cars, those vehicle owners, they lead the charge towards the electric vehicle more than any other generation. Combine that growing demand with growing legislation and the technology push of the new entrants, and you have the most significant disruptive influence on the auto industry since the horse gave way to the car. The auto industry is going zero emissions, and by zero emissions, what I'm really saying is EV. The speed of the change was partially self-inflicted with the Dieselgate scandal, but the move to both clean up inner city air and reduce human impact on the environment is an inevitable route of travel. The route to EV is more disruptive on the industry than any other event in its history, since it opens up the closed shop to newcomers. The technology is far simpler than the internal combustion engine, and the EV allows easier entry for the digital disruptions led by the tech companies. So, we go into a decade of change. Legislators reflecting the demands of a changing generation that require clean transportation. Customers with new values and demanding changes in the way that we travel. Technology that is disruptive, and a startup culture that is capable of wobbling the establishment. The auto industry will describe these trends in their normal 4-letter acronyms. I'll give you one example of CASE: connected, autonomous, shared, and emissions-free. This is superficially how the industry deals with the implied threat, but in reality, the investment in transforming the portfolio to EV is enormous and will have a material impact on each car maker's bottom line over the coming years. Some manufacturers, for example, have guided us to expect a 30% reduction in EBIT to pay for the investments. The reality might be even greater. So, the car industry is changing under the most turbulent pressures in 100 years. And then you add a pandemic and a global recession, and massive changes are inevitable. What does all this mean for the automotive industry in the UK? Well, it's not great. This is in spite of the fact that the industry employs 823,000 people in the UK, has a turnover of around £82 billion and an added value to the UK economy of £19 billion. The UK produced in 2019 1.3 million cars, which incidentally was the lowest volume since 2010. This marked the 3rd consecutive year of falling production from a peak of 1.72 million cars in 2016. And no doubt, as we see the 2020 numbers, it will make it a 4th year. This against a broadly static new car sales volume in the UK of around 2.3 million and a decline in the number of cars exported from the UK to around 1 million. This level of production means the UK is no longer in the top 10 countries. In fact, it's 16th behind the Czech Republic, and means that we make half the number of cars of either Spain or France and about 1/4 of that of Germany. Or put another way, we represent about 1% of the total annual car production worldwide. The vast majority of UK produced automotive goods are exported overseas and are destined for the EU. And some 7 out of 10 cars bought by UK consumers come from factories in the bloc. By securing a comprehensive free trade agreement with our largest trading partner, the EU, and here I don't want to get into the politics of Brexit, so I only speak for the auto industry, we've dodged a bullet. The sudden imposition of tariffs, just as the sector was striving to restart and recover from the current crisis, would have been catastrophic. Yet, we also have to overcome the long-term systemic issues for which there is no singular answer and are not caused by issues just starting yesterday, plus, of course, the new challenges resulting from Brexit in the definition of rules of origin. Beyond the emotion of Brexit, let's get back to hard facts and the fundamentals of making cars. The ingredients of maintaining and growing production in a country are as follows. Number one, home country advantage. There will always be pressure to invest in the home market and fill home factories. This is relevant in the context of the Japanese manufacturers, given the new free trade agreements between EU and Japan. However, ownership is not something that we can fix, so let's move on to something that we can. Sourcing decisions. These are primarily driven by economic rationale, i.e., where is the cheapest place to build the car? I think we all know that margins on new cars are very small, at best 6 to 8%, including sales finance and optional accessories. The margin on the base car is often, at best, zero. Therefore, even with minor variations of what's called TDC, or total delivered cost, this makes a profound effect on profitability. Most, if not all, of the plants in the UK are very efficient when operating at close to full capacity. They've enjoyed great success because of this efficiency in the transformation process, and in spite of the fact that on average, only 44% of the car is sourced in the UK. This gets distorted when you think about EVs and the cost of the battery, a point that I'll come back to later. Now let's turn to research and development. R&D is sticky. Its stickiness is a great asset in downturns. Look to Formula One. Formula One stays in the UK because the expertise is here. R&D will always be located close to the mother plants, and the advanced engineering tends to be trialed close to the engineering centres of auto companies. Therefore, in the long term, we do need a materially relevant industrial strategy that sets forth greater intervention. Proper and sustainable investment in new energy technology. I note that yesterday, the EU announced a second, what they call, important project of common European interest, IPCEI, which is focused on supporting research and innovation in the battery value chain. The 12 member states will provide 2.9 billion euros and unlock an additional 9 billion euros, so 12 billion euros in total, of aid and investment, are all going into battery development, where the EU is trying to create the battery equivalent of Airbus. We should be under no doubt that the UK will be in direct competition for this investment. Intervention into the process to promote UK research through commercial applications. Did you know, I'm sure you do, but did you know that the lithium-ion battery was invented by a British scientist called Stanley Whittingham, but it's been exploited in China, Korea, and Japan. And there are numerous examples like this, and we have to improve the support for startups that carry concepts through to application. We also need to build the infrastructure for electric and autonomous cars to exist. Make the UK the most open destination for utilisation of this technology.
I used to be the head of sustainable transport for the Scottish Government, and I was kindly invited by Nissan way back when they launched their Nissan Leaf in Portugal to go and drive an electric vehicle. I am a confirmed petrol head. However, because of Andy and the work of the team at Nissan, I sat in an electric vehicle for the very first time, and I drove it round Estoril in Portugal, and I fell in love. And I fell in love with a dream, which is now becoming a reality, that people can drive cars that don't have petrol, don't have diesel, don't have emissions, and are simply better to drive. And it opened up, I often say that the Nissan Leaf was the gateway drug for me into all manners of sustainability, because I learned that there's a better way to live your life. There's a cleaner way. And as the head of sustainable transport for the Scottish Government, it was my job to put in the charging infrastructure in Scotland. So I raised £3.2 million from the UK government, matched by the Scottish Government, to put in the charging network in Scotland. We put in hydrogen buses into Aberdeen, the first in the UK to do so. We have biofuels created in Scotland, which are in all of the diesel and petrol that you have in the UK. And I did this safe in the knowledge that we were helping to create a better tomorrow. So I'm here to talk about the strategy that we used to put in sustainable transport in Scotland. And it starts with a vision. It starts with having a dream. And we had a dream in Scotland. And that dream was that we would have the greatest climate change targets in the world. Not the UK, not France, not Japan, not China, Scotland, little old Scotland. And so we set a high bar and we said, we're going to achieve this. What we didn't know was how. And so we had to set off with no policy, no plan, no approach, and start to look at what was the art of the possible? What do we want to achieve? And what we wanted to achieve was to get petrol and diesel vehicles off the road. And I'll say it now. Electric vehicles are not for everyone. Electric vehicles at the moment are not suitable for every journey cycle in every location, all day, every day. They have to be used appropriately. There is a hierarchy of transport, and so walking is important, cycling is important, using low emission public transport is important. Because we have a massive problem in all developed countries of congestion. And if we don't get people out of single-use cars, we will have a congested world forever and a day. So we have to start to have a vision that says electric vehicles are part of an infrastructure mix that will allow us to move people and services, people and products around the country without causing harmful emissions. What we also needed was a champion, and we had a champion in Scotland who was our minister. And whilst Stuart Stevenson set off on the journey, he didn't last very long. But I then became the champion. And I had somebody at Nissan say to me, why don't you set out what Scotland will do? And why don't you make it happen? And I was a humble civil servant, a fairly low-ranking civil servant, and said, okay, so I left the Scottish Government to be that champion, because I knew that having created the policies, I needed to go out and walk the talk. I needed to demonstrate that it's actually very easy to live with electric vehicles, both in a consumer setting and in a commercial setting. Integrated policy is absolutely critical. So in Scotland, we found it necessary to talk to other people. Ugh. So in transport, we thought in a silo. We didn't speak to people in energy. We didn't speak to people in health. We just did our own thing. And it was really, really important to horizontally integrate so that we all talked about things like better energy creation, storage and use, that we all talked about health together, that we all talked about waste and energy from waste, that we all talked about resilience of energy for our country. But once we've done all the talking, the fourth part of this wheel is JDI. Just do it. We can all find 101 reasons not to do something. Our task was to find the one reason to do it. And that one reason for me was personal. I have children who have asthma. I wanted to give them a better atmosphere in which to operate and to breathe. I wanted to help my kids. And that's why I did it. But just doing something, Dr. Sam Gardner, who was the head of the WWF in Scotland, said to me when I started in the job, he said, "We don't actually mind what you do, just do something, because for too long we've done nothing." It's important, I think, to stick to the knitting. Do the things which we know need doing. And knitting these things together, these policy areas together, is key at a local level to make change happen. And so I think there's a great deal of work. And I have to say, since I've been doing the research for this evening, the amount of policy integration that there is in Huddersfield and Kirklees, West Yorkshire, is absolutely central to your success. And so things like improving air quality, reducing CO2, reducing NOx and particulate matter is key. But we need to create a knowledge network. We need to share. I see Robert Llewellyn's in the house tonight, and Robert is a great advocate of electric vehicles, probably none better in the UK. He is part of our knowledge network now. We've got him here. So what does he know? How can he help? Who can he open doors to? Barry's here. Barry's done a great deal of work in his career to improve Huddersfield, to improve his constituency and how it operates. What is key is, how do we get the messages out that Huddersfield is serious about making change happen in these core policy areas? EVs won't solve congestion. We need a separate way of looking at congestion from a very strategic level across the UK. And there is, as far as I'm concerned, no strategy in place, not from OZEV, from the government, or anywhere else to reduce the number of vehicles we have on our roads. That has to change. We have low emission zones coming, which are seen as a very, very big stick to hit commercial operations. And I think there are electric vans, there are hydrogen vehicles which can help to meet low emission zone standards. But businesses are frightened. Businesses are wary of investing in what we see as new technology still at a time when they're just struggling to survive. And we have to be realistic. A compelling case has to be made to make the change from petrol and diesel to low emission vehicles from the bottom line upwards. And Andy talked about the total cost of manufacture. There's also the total cost of ownership, which is really key. And I would urge you to get in touch with dealerships, the Energy Savings Trust. There are countless organisations, the Carbon Trust, who will all help you to understand what the total cost of ownership is for a petrol or diesel vehicle, whether it be a consumer or commercial vehicle, and an electric vehicle. And what you'll find is that over the life of the vehicle, the costs are less for an electric vehicle than they are for a petrol or diesel equivalent. The upfront costs for those vehicles can be more expensive, for the electric vehicles can be more expensive, but viewed across the lifetime, not necessarily. There is money out there to support the transport revolution that's happening. And so OZEV, the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles, the UK government, put up money to facilitate introduction of home charging, the plug-in car grant, workplace charging, on-street residential charge parking schemes, and West Yorkshire Combined Authority has been in receipt of £2 million for 66 rapid chargers and 22 fast chargers under the ultra-low emission taxi infrastructure scheme. So building good bids, making that bid for money, finding the right people to open doors to make change happen is really key. And once you get some support, harness it. Grab hold of Robert Llewellyn and don't let him away without committing to come and helping Huddersfield achieve its ambitions. What now? Try, and try again. Go to your dealerships, borrow vehicles, beg, don't steal, but borrow. Get your bum in a seat. Try an electric vehicle. Andy Palmer gave me the opportunity to try an electric vehicle. And once I had, I never went back. I hope that your journey's the same. There you go.
It's an 80-mile range, so you can see from that there's quite a few journeys you can make before you need to charge up. And especially if you can go downhill more often, you can go up. So then we need to think about the dwell time. The dwell time being, how long do we want to be in a location? And that's whether that's us going somewhere, or from a council's point of view and a community's point of view, how long we want you to stay there. And we'll come back to that in a minute when we talk about the technology. But it's important to think about dwell time because it makes an important discussion point when setting up the infrastructure. And then there's use profile. So I've done a lot of work in our consultancy on modelling of use and where we do in relation to how you integrate it with renewable energy and district heating as well, and the combined heat and power. So whether you're talking about on-street parking, charging, or off-street charging, or forecourts or multi-storey car parks, along with a number of other places, we need to consider a number of different issues with it. Are they going to be available easily? If it's on-street parking, is it a one-way street? We then have to think about the technology, and we'll come on to that as well. So there are lots of things to think about when we establish a good quality infrastructure. And it was mentioned earlier that Wicker have put in 88 rapid chargers in West Yorkshire, and they have. Some of them would really be nice to be connected up to the grid at the moment in Kirklees, because we have at least two that I know of that aren't. So there are issues that we need to deal with. If it's a multi-storey car park, when is it going to be open? When is it going to be closed? Is that the same time as you're going to want to use the vehicles? How long do you want to be charging up for? And then there's the actual human behaviour, which is the other part of this. And especially for on-street parking, I keep on getting asked, how are we going to deal with all the people who don't have off-street parking? And we're going to have charging posts all the way along the street. Well, not necessarily. It doesn't have to be like that. You have the grid serves putting in the equivalent to a petrol station, but an electric charging station. We need hub charging, rapid charging, and also other versions of charging, so slower and fast charging and ultra fast charging as well. But we need a combination of all of them. And the important thing on that is that someone, if they go to the cinema, is not going to move away from that charge point if they've charged up after an hour because it's run out. It's charged up if they're in the middle of the cinema. I went to the bank the other day and I needed to do something fairly technical with the bank. I put the car on charge and my thought was, how long is it going to take in the bank, and am I going to get back to the car in time? Now, I'm fairly keyed up on what's going on, but if you don't get over those issues, and you don't provide the right infrastructure for the right people in the right places, then you have a problem. So human behaviour, I think, is a very critical part of this discussion point. So let's move on to the technology and the infrastructure. There's a number of different charge point requirements. There's different types of chargers. We've mentioned slow, fast, rapid, ultra rapid. And basically, this is about how fast you can charge the battery. Now, they're all valid in different circumstances. And if you're at home, then a slow charger is perfectly fine for most people to charge up overnight and be ready for the following day. Yeah, a fast charger might be good if you're going to go in and sit for 3 or 4 hours in a workplace, or even half a day in a workplace. So you get that ability to charge up. You don't need a rapid charger. And even if you have a rapid charger or even an ultra rapid charger, it might not actually help with the technology you've got on the car, because without going into technicalities of it, there are different issues that go with the car. So an ultra rapid charger, if we put them all in Kirklees, would be absolutely no good to John and I with our car, because our car charges at 50 kilowatts maximum. So putting in a rapid charger at 150 kilowatts or even more doesn't actually benefit us for anything. So we have to think about what we're going to put in, where we're going to put it, and why. And back to that dwell time, we need to think as a town and as a district, if we put in a charger, how long do we want people to be staying and going to the shops or going to the cafes and using the facilities we have? So it's important that we get a balance right with the charge systems. So for me, this is all about getting quality products in place. And we've talked just now about the West Yorkshire Combined Authority ones. I don't think we're getting the best quality of products into the system. They're not the most reliable, and we are having problems. They need to be able to be paid as you go. So you don't have to think about which app have I got to work today? Is it going to work? Have I got a web connection at the time? So there are lots of different issues that we need to consider when doing this. And a balanced approach and looking at it from a strategic angle and talking about all the other things is very important. So just to finish off, I do see that we have a fantastic opportunity in Kirklees. The vision that we could set ourselves could create jobs and new skill sets. It could support the young people. It will provide a way of using our waste to energy that comes off that to charge our electric vehicles. We could generate more green electricity in the district and use it for these vehicles. So I'll stop there because I think that's probably enough for the moment, but I'll look forward to questions. Thank you.
My name's Sid Sadiq. I'm a Huddersfield born and bred guy. I've been involved in the Huddersfield Sustain group now for a few months. I sit on one of the teams involved in the transport future fuels team. Really enjoying that. Really, I'd also like to start with saying the presentations the three guys have put together. Fascinating, true to the point, and I applaud you really, because I think you've hit the salient points on all of those really. I'd like to just take a couple of minutes really just to give you my experience involvement in vehicles and what we're doing today really. So my background for everybody else is I'm a commercial vehicle guy. I'm not a passenger car guy. I've been involved in the commercial vehicle industry for too long now, 30 odd years really. So I sell and service through a Mercedes-Benz franchise. I've got 2 of those electric vehicles today, so I can give you some thoughts and the selling process and the maintenance issues around there really. I own a fleet management business where we're running 2,000 diesel powered trucks today and slowly moving over to electric vehicles. So that's all around service. Customer service, the journey, the transition. We advise lots of companies up and down the country for doing that really. I have an EV manufacturing business based in Blackburn. And the Optare guys have been to see me. We're looking to collaborate and various other things really. So I have a business in Blackburn, which is a new start, 3 years old, a company called Electra Commercial Vehicles. And we're the only company in the world, and we're Yorkshire boys, and we're doing it in Lancashire, unfortunately, but I'd like to do that in a different way, really. But this is a collaborative venture. all automotive manufacturers have to collaborate. The world is changing. Earlier on, the thin margins supposedly that these guys are working on, really. So the world is around collaboration. So we're collaborating with the largest companies in the world. So I work with Daimler, Isuzu, CNH, Iveco. These guys are building glider products, which are factory-made trucks with no traditional IC engine, transmission. We buy those from the factories. We bring them to Blackburn and we electrify them. And we've got customers all up and down the UK. We've got customers in North America now. We've got customers in Europe, really. So, I think we're groundbreaking. So I can talk about real experience about building vehicles and the challenges that we face, really. So here we are. So a small team of people building worldwide product, really. My biggest issue, really, is supply chain. Andy mentioned it earlier on. There is nothing in the UK I can buy apart from cables and connectors and a few odds and bits and bobs. We buy everything from around the world. So if we're going to kickstart the economy and really get into EV, we need to build factories that are making things in the UK. Yep. Government money, which is loads of money, goes into various things. We really need to push for manufacturers to start building batteries, electric motors, power electronics, all the things that we need. So my supply chain is Chinese. I buy lithium-ion batteries or modules, which we then turn into battery packs here. I'm buying motors from North America. I'm buying loads of power electronics from Northern Europe. Desperately as I try, you can't buy anything, So, there's a real life sort of experience, really. The issues around batteries and recycling, I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions around what do we do with these vehicles in a number of years, really. So I'll tell you what we're doing, and this is a holistic approach rather than a pure vehicle manufacturing approach. We thought about all this before we started building vehicles, really. So all of my customers will be reusing our batteries in the future for domestic applications and commercial applications, coupled with solar. So I've invested in a battery solar company. One electric vehicle will power 70 terraced houses in the future with the battery modules that we're putting in there. 4 of our vehicles will provide 1 megawatt of battery capacity. Now, arguably, in 8 years' time, because that's how long these vehicles are going to run for in primary life, these batteries will be degraded, but they'll be degraded by 8 to 10%. So there's 90% capacity in lithium-ion batteries, which will run for the next 20 years. By that time, 2 decades away, we'll find a way to recycle batteries. So there's a lot of hype, a lot of nonsense spoken about EVs and the dangers and all the other bits and bobs. It's rubbish. We've got to get through the message that this is the future and it's here to stay. The other issue I'd like to sort of make is I'm a car user. I'm a big petrol head. Andy, I've got some Aston Martins. I think I've raced with you somewhere once or twice as well, really. I've got lots of other cars, really, but my daily commute is a hybrid car if I'm going long distances. When I talk long distance, I'm doing 400 miles a day. My other commute is an Audi e-tron. It's got a 90 kilowatt battery in there. I've got a 7 kilowatt charger at home. All of our factories, I've got 25 facilities in the UK through the various companies that we've got. We've fitted chargers in. It's cost me 500 quid a charger, 7 kilowatt charger. I don't worry about range. I come to Blackburn, I go to Warrington, I go to Skelmersdale in Lancashire. I'd like to go to Huddersfield, Barry, but anyway, that's another story. But, I charge my car probably 3 times a week. No problem. Range anxiety, no problem whatsoever, really, So I don't need a high-speed charger. I don't need a massive infrastructure. These things are going to have to happen for the public at large, clearly. I understand that, service stations, etc., really, But, most people, like us, commuters, we sleep at night. Plug your bloody car in at night time and charge it and go to work the next day. What's the big deal? Why are we making such a big deal of all of this stuff, really? We're scared of the dark and we don't know what's in the dark. When you go to the dentist, it's actually not that bad, is it, really? But you're really scared before you go, perhaps, really, as I am. But I'm just making leading the world in this, really. We've had no money, we've had no grant assistance, nobody's really interested. I've got loads of customers who I could double my capacity if I could do that, really. You know, I would sell vehicles all day long, really. So something's going wrong somewhere with funding, isn't it, I guess, really? You know, well, you know, I'm here. Please, you know, I don't want funding, but, you know, if there was an opportunity to grow our business and get more electric vehicles into the marketplace, why aren't we doing it? That's all I would like to say.